Welcome to this GTM webinar in association with WorldFirst on managing your online business in a post-pandemic world. My name is Mark Stimfig and I'm the co-founder of GTM Global. And for the next hour or so, I'm going to be your host. This is the first in a series of bi-monthly webinars when GTM Global will be delivering, with the kind support of WorldFirst, on how you can recalibrate and grow your online in the new norms beyond COVID. The ensuing webinars in June and July will look at how to grow your online sales and supply chain in key regions like North America, China, and on funding and cash management, and an interview conversation with the founders of WorldFirst on their past, present, and future directions. But in regard to today's webinar, we'll shortly hear from Jeremy Wilson, CCO of Practicology, on the recent changes in online behavior, strategies for resilience and growth, and how all this plays into marketplaces globally. I'll then invite our panel of experts, James Reed, Partnerships Lead from WorldFirst, Colin Stansbury, Strategic Alliance Manager at Avalara, and Tom Dixon, eCommerce Lead at the Department for International Trade, to provide you with some wider content and context on all of that. So let's, before we do that though, I would encourage you as an audience to fire any chat questions through to us, and either we'll ask them directly to Jeremy at salient points, or we'll save them up for the panel discussion at the end of this webinar. Finally, it's also important to say that our expert panelists are available for one-to-one private chat after the webinar. So if you've got something more confidential to ask or something more strategic, please do get in touch and contact with me on email, and we'll coordinate diaries for a call with any of the guys afterwards. So without further ado, please be upstanding and welcome Jeremy Wilson from International eCommerce Consultancy and Amazon 3P, official marketplace seller, Practicology. Jeremy. What I'm going to do now, if it's okay, we're just going to press pause because we're moving on to the sort of international piece now, and I want to bring on our other experts, our other panelists who can make some interesting contributions. So I'm going to, if I can, ask James Reed from WorldFirst to just introduce himself, and then I'm going to ask him some contextual questions around where this is going, and bring the other panelists in. So James.
Sure. Hi. Thanks, Mark. So yeah, I'm James from WorldFirst. We're part of Ant Financial, who are the world's highest valued financial technology company. And we work with tens of thousands of businesses around the world who sell through marketplaces and through online stores. And what we offer is basically a suite of localized currency accounts, which enables global merchants to sell overseas and then ultimately take back control of their payments and receipts.
And what I was going to also, obviously, James, we've moved from the sort of what's happening locally to what is happening in the international scene. And from your angle, obviously, there are marketplaces out there like Amazon and their payment service providers like Stripe, and they offer a multiple currency checkout and account management tool for converting revenues. How does that work, and what are the considerations, and how does that play into everything Jeremy's been talking about?
Yeah, they do, and because they do, how you get paid in foreign currencies is sort of often a bit of an overlooked factor of digital sales. Amazon and Stripe both make it really, really easy. The whole process of selling overseas and getting your pounds back into your account is straightforward. And whilst on the surface that looks great, there are typically really quite significant costs to be considered, as well as actually inefficiencies as well. So as an example, if you're selling on Amazon.com and receiving funds from clients in US dollars, Amazon will charge in the region of 4% for transferring those funds back to your sterling account. And if you use Stripe as your PSP on your online store and switch on your euro and US dollar payment options, as Jeremy was alluding to earlier, Stripe will charge in the region of 2 to 2.5% on top of their normal processing fee, which I believe is in the region of about 1% for most. for making those payments back to sterling. So using the example of a cosmetics company who sells 50K worth of products in the US per month, that's $600,000 per year. Amazon taking 4% of those is 25 grand, which is as a salesperson for a few months. So of course, many of the businesses tuning in will also have supply payments to make in other currencies, which means that not only are they having to convert back from the sale country into sterling, then they're also having to do an initial transaction to make that supply payment. So potentially two conversions to be done. So to put that into sort of real life for people, if they have sales on Amazon.com and customers in the US paying through Stripe and have supply payments to make in the US, then the process is to swap US dollars to sterling at between 2 and 4%, depending on who the marketplace PSP is, and then make an additional sterling US dollar transfer, which, if done with a bank, could easily be sort of between 1 and 1.5%. So that's potentially 5% of margin gone for exchanging money that never needed to be exchanged in the first place and could have been kept in US dollars.
And that's really interesting, James, because one of the key problems that a number of people who signed up for the webinar was about cash flow and cash management. So effectively, you're making this a lot more efficient, aren't you, by what you're offering and able to do too?
Yeah, essentially, that's exactly it. That's 5% that people don't normally think about, and it's if you're selling on Amazon, margins aren't often that generous anyway. So anything that can be saved is obviously a good thing.
Fantastic. So I'm going to bring in another panelist here, and this is Colin Stansbury, who is let's just get his he's the EMEA manager in Avalara. And Colin, can you just give us a bit of a heads up about how Avalara works into global marketplaces and the importance of compliance in all of this?
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Jeremy, originally for your speech. I have to say, it did bring me down a little bit more than I wanted to on this Thursday afternoon. But then again, that's the world we live in, right? And speaking of the world we live in, just because the world is shifting online and transactions may be dipping, it doesn't mean that the tax on those transactions is any less important, right? So what we're going to be seeing here is taxing authorities taking VAT and sales tax, the lowest hanging fruit, the easiest to change, and they will be popping it in their pocket as they so desire. So what it's going to mean is more scrutiny, more automation required for businesses to be able to file their returns, and more pressure put on accurate calculation, and then finally the actual reporting of those transactions. So what do Avalara do? Getting back to your point, well, we provide technology that works within your business stack and is able to provide end-to-end compliance. So effectively keeping away any and all nasty taxing authorities and allow you to do what you do best, which is, of course, grow your business.
And again, that plays into the cash flow, doesn't it, Colin? Because it's both in and out at different points if it's not managed properly.
Absolutely right. And what we've seen, again, another trend is what we call the death of the manual process. Any kind of business activity that doesn't drive cash value to a business is now being scrutinized. And that activity is being said, okay, can we get rid of it, automate it, or outsource it? Those are your three options when it comes to these. And what we're looking to, and what we're understanding, and what we're looking to be able to do is provide automation for those services to be able to help companies that do have a cash flow issue, but allow their finance team to do things that allow to streamline the business, reduce that OpEx, reduce that CapEx, get more money back from your government, from government taxes. And effectively, it's about a little bit of transparency, isn't it?
And that's a beautiful lead in. You mentioned government, Colin, and at this point, I wanted to bring in Tom Dixon here, who's part of the Department of International Trades. He's one of the lead e-commerce experts in the DIT. And Tom, I wanted to ask from a government perspective, which is pivotal, because what help and assistance is available currently from UK government to support online businesses. And I understand as well, there's a directory of approved e-commerce marketplace service providers. You've got some great deals there. Can you give us a bit of a sense of where all that is from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. A good tie-in as well, like you say. My name's Tom. Like Mark said, I'm an e-commerce specialist at the Department for International Trade. More specifically, I work in a team called the e-exporting team. Now, that's a program that was set up, I believe, in 2014 to help UK companies specifically to sell through online channels. As Mark mentioned, we have various different partnerships, mainly with marketplaces. I think it's 39 at the moment. I mean, in many cases, we've negotiated special deals that might be a reduction in fees, etc. We have a number of different services, like I say, one being marketplace partnerships. Secondly, we have a tool called Selling Online Overseas, which is basically a marketplace finder. Very easy to use. If you go on there and select your category of products and the regions that you're interested in selling to, then it will display a load of marketplaces. And we also have a network of what we call eCommerce advisors. That's a really great service. They offer free one-to-one support to UK businesses who are looking for e-commerce support.
Fantastic. And talking about that support, if I play that back into both Colin and to James, you've got some interesting incentives to help UK businesses just manage at this current time. James, you've got a really interesting opportunity, haven't you, there for UK companies?
Yeah, so I mean, more so in sort of partnership with you guys in the webinar series that we're running, really targeting SMEs in the UK who are looking at their international expansion. But we're offering 2 months of free payments, free FX for customers who sign up in this period of time. And just going back to what I spoke to before, which was the margins being compressed by marketplaces and payment service providers who are charging pretty lofty fees. It's more about getting that infrastructure in place. Multi-currency accounts are very easy to come by now, which allow you to open in-country currency accounts around the world from where you can make and receive those payments and just control the funds a little bit better. So yes, we've got that offer on in terms of offering that free 2 months of foreign exchange. But what I'd urge people to do here is just take that time to really understand your costs. Do you need to be doing those conversions? Can you keep currency where it is? Obviously, everyone needs to repatriate or send surplus funds overseas at one point in time. But understand what your current costs are before you do that, and that's certainly something that we could help with.
It's this balance, isn't it, between risk and opportunity? And again, Cole, you got that same dilemma and dynamic, haven't you, at Avalara, that you've got some offers and opportunities for customers to work with you to manage that in terms of some of your software solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. There are only 2 things that are certain in life, and that's death and taxes. I can't help you with the first one, but I can help you with the second. And what we're looking to do here is offering a 90-day free trial period for our AvaTax automation software. So if you're selling to the United States, you'll need to be able to manage sales tax, just as if you're selling anywhere across Europe, right? So we're offering that 3-month free trial available in a newsletter that we send after this. And the other thing we're doing is providing a Nexus assessment tool where you're able to put in your transactions, and it'll be able to clear the way a nice, lovely path to understanding where and when you have a requirement for sales tax in the United States. Because if anyone here is selling to the United States, then you know enough to know that you don't know enough to handle this yourself. So please contact us at Avalara, and we'll be happy to have a look at it for you.
And one of the things that this conversation is moving, obviously, in the direction of is that trade is globalized. And to come back to Jeremy and Tom here, that movement to marketplace and internationalizing everything. Jeremy, from your perspective, can you give us a bit of an overview on the dynamics, say, in Middle East, North America, and in those marketplaces, and how you see things shaping up? And maybe Tom can come in on that too.
Yeah, I mean, I'll use Amazon because simply it's almost a default for marketplaces at the moment. But Amazon are creating ecosystems within areas. So in Middle East, you mentioned that about this time last year, souq.com became Amazon.ae. It's still planned that souq.ksa is going to become Amazon.ksa very soon this year. That's going to be part of one ecosystem supplying the Middle Eastern market. Will roll into Egypt and some of the other major Arabic language territories later this year or early next year, depending on how impacted they are. In North America, they're pushing north into Canada, south into Mexico, increasingly just making life easy to cross border, for currency, for tax, and all these other areas we've been talking about. In Europe, a couple of months ago, we had Amazon.nl. So Bol was a big Dutch marketplace, virtually had the market to itself for a long time, quite a bit of cross-border activity coming in from France and Germany, but Amazon have now created their own Dutch iteration. Now within Europe, you can have a single listing that covers all territories. You have to do some translation, but you can list once and sell across all of those territories now. James and Colin, tax and currency is still an issue, but a lot of it's handled by Amazon, but at a cost. So even if you're 1p, you're selling to Amazon, or 3p, you're selling through Amazon, there's still tax and cost to be taken into account. So Amazon are maturing. You're moving further over. Amazon within India is having a great battle with Flipkart and how that one enjoy the big platform created by Reliance. So there's a lot of activity going on in India as well.
Tom, what's your view? How do you see all this shaping up with marketplaces and globalization?
I think the only thing I would add there is that we're seeing a lot of inquiries coming in at the moment for whatever reason a brand or a business might have been reluctant to on board with the marketplace in the past, but what they're seeing now is it as a very different sales channel. In particular with brands with excess stock during the pandemic, are looking at marketplaces to be able to shift that stock essentially, and just looking at it as a really easy option to sell on, and not just an additional sales channel, but maybe using it as a completely different platform, like I say, to get rid of excess stock or seasonal stock, etc.
That's a good point, Tom, and it's interesting. A lot of businesses will still see eBay as very different to Amazon, and that's one thing. And eBay, I think, will struggle to ever change that perception. But certainly, people are happy to put Prime on Amazon, but not put Prime stock on eBay. But will use eBay as as you say, a channel to market for out of season stock or similar.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of the marketplaces have had to deal with that kind of stigma, especially eBay. But I think that's kind of going away now, especially from a brand's point of view, and they're really looking at marketplaces, like I say, as a really genuine and authentic sales channel.
I'm just wondering this time, guys, any of the delegates who have logged on, has anyone got any particular questions they want to fire at any of our experts here? Just any thoughts? Yeah, I can see Jasmine waving. Do you want to unmute yourself, Jasmine, and ask the question?
Yes, hi there. Very interesting listening to all of you. Thank you so much. Probably to Jeremy, but interested in anybody who feels they want to take it on. I run an advertising and branding agency called 7 Brands. Jeremy, what is your advice to advertising marketing agencies about how we need to adapt our services to help clients adapt as they're all, going online, etc.? It's a big question, but
I was going to say that's a very big question, Jasmine, but I think a very pertinent question. And I sort of go back to a couple of, I look at Procter and Gamble, who I mentioned earlier, who have really doubled down on advertising, but changing the focus of it. Moving away from broadcast media, the spray and pray approach, more targeted, understanding. One of the great things about digital is that you can get a huge amount of insight on your customers, on your visitors, and start using that. Start understanding who they are. Are they who you think you are? And that's one of the critical things we've seen in the past, is that a business will come to us and say, we are X, we target X. And we look at their customer data and say, no, you're not, it's Y. And, so I think everyone start using that data, don't stop spending money. People will come out of this, the strong will survive, the people with a great proposition will survive. Invest in your brand, believe it, but focus and understand your customer and spend it where they're going to be.
Thanks, Jeremy. How does that resonate to James and Tom from what Jasmine said? I know it's slightly tangential, but what's your sense of that?
I can go there. I'm not a marketing and advertising expert, but what we've seen with lots of brands at the moment and the success that they're having with their ad spend is really targeting that ad spend. I think the end consumer at the moment actually expects the ads to be targeted to them a lot more than they used to be. For example, I received an email from a company the other day that was trying to sell me women's shoes. Now, they obviously haven't looked at who I am, so the email just gets deleted. So
Are you sure about that, Tom?
Say that again, sorry?
Are you quite sure about that?
I'm not going to go through my internet search history. But yeah, like I say, I think I expect the emails and the ads to be a bit more targeted. So I think that's probably a takeaway thing that people can take.
Yeah, totally agree with that.
Okay, fantastic. So I think we've got to probably call this session to a bit of a close. But what I wanted to say before we do that is that we will have Jeremy's slides available, which we will send on. And I wanted to thank him for his presentation, his sagacity, and the sagacity of the panel for all their inputs. And as I mentioned, if there are, and I know there are, I've had a number of texts already about organizations who want to talk to the guys from the panel. We'll be in contact after the webinar, and we'll see what we can set up for you to have one-to-one with Practicology, WorldFirst, Colin from Avalara, and Tom from the DIT. And I just wanted to say that we have another webinar, which is very focused on a particular continent. We're doing one on North America in 2 weeks' time with Gary Vaynerchuk's agency in Los Angeles, where we're going to be looking at how to expand your US online sales and supply chain around it, with hubs in conversations with live hubs in Phoenix and Washington. So we'll be in touch with you about that webinar early next week. And finally, thanking again all of our panelists, but particularly WorldFirst for their kind support. And at the end of this, as always, I wish you well and hope you will all stay safe.